Today on the podcast, we answer the question, will my twins spend time in the NICU?
You're listening to the Life with Multiples podcast, the show for new and expectant parents of twins, triplets, and more.
We're Chris and Kathleen, your hosts and triplet parents. We've survived life with multiples, and you will too.
For many expectant parents of multiples, a big question is, will my babies spend time in the NICU? And the answer is potentially, but not necessarily. First of all, what is a NICU? NICU, N-I-C-U, is short for Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. But for the purposes of this conversation, we'll also be referring to time spent in any hospital nursery.
Time in a NICU is not uncommon for twins, triplets, and more. And so a lot of parents of multiples assume that their babies will spend time in a NICU. But time in the NICU is not a guarantee. Now, with multiples, there is a higher rate of prematurity, so many multiples do in fact require time at the hospital after birth. Sometimes it's just for a few days so the doctor can monitor them, while others might enjoy a longer stay. The length of time largely depends on how early your twins are born and their overall health. So the earlier your babies arrive, the more chance there is that you'll be spending at least some time in a NICU or hospital nursery.
So there are different levels of hospital nurseries, and each level corresponds to the level of care they can provide. Specifics will depend on your country or region, but for example, here's a simplified explanation of typical nursery levels in North America. So a level 1 nursery is pretty much a regular newborn nursery, equipped to deal with babies born after 35 weeks gestation. A level 2 is often referred to as a special care nursery, which is a nursery that can care for babies born after 32 weeks gestation. And a level 3 nursery is what is typically known as a neonatal intensive care unit, a NICU, and that's a nursery equipped to care for babies born before 32 weeks gestation. So it's a good idea to know what level of nursery your hospital has and plan for contingencies in case your babies come earlier than expected.
Our triplets, for example, were born at 32 and a half weeks, which is pretty average for triplets, and they weighed 3.9 pounds, 3.14 pounds, and 2.9 pounds. They were in a level 2 nursery for just over 4 weeks. They had no serious health issues at birth, but because they were premature and small and skinny, they had difficulty regulating their body temperature. So they needed some time in incubators to keep baking. Also, at that gestational age, infants don't have the cognitive ability to coordinate sucking, swallowing, and breathing at the same time, which is necessary for breast and bottle feeding. For the first week or so, they were fed via tubes. So our guys are what the NICU nurses usually refer to as feeders and growers, because that's all they need to do: grow a bit, gain some fat, and learn to feed on their own.
The prospect of spending time in a NICU can seem scary. I'm sure you've all seen images of premature babies hooked up to all sorts of wires and monitors, but we found that once you understand what all those things are there for, and that they're there to keep your baby safe, it doesn't seem so scary. Like we said, we spent about 4 weeks in the NICU, and we had a great experience. The nurses were wonderful, helping us get into a rhythm and onto a schedule with the babies. They taught us how to bathe and feed them, and were even on hand to coach Kathleen with breastfeeding. Another big plus of having our babies at the hospital was that it also gave us time to go home in the evenings and rest. And this was important, especially since Kathleen was recovering from a C-section. In the beginning, it was hard leaving our babies at the hospital overnight, but we knew that they were in good hands, and the rest it gave us was invaluable as we prepared for their eventual homecoming.
So to recap, time in the NICU is not a sure thing. There are many parents of multiples, twins especially, who won't spend any significant time in a NICU. But this will largely depend on how early your babies arrive. The likelihood of spending time in a NICU will increase if you're pregnant with higher order multiples, so that's triplets or more. And finally, time in the NICU isn't necessarily something to worry about. We have very good memories of our time in the NICU. We learned a ton from the nurses, it gave us time to recoup after their birth, and it gave us an opportunity to get into a rhythm with our babies before we got them all home.
So, if you're currently pregnant with twins or more and you're in the midst of preparing, we encourage you to check out a free prenatal video training we created called Preparing for Your Multiples. In it, we talk about everything from pregnancy and delivery to navigating the NICU and bringing your babies home. And you can access that free training by visiting us at lifewithmultiples.com/prepare. Once more, that free information to help you prepare is at lifewithmultiples.com/prepare. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Life with Multiples podcast, and we'll see you next time.